in Wilmington, you're looking at houses. What do you think you should be thinking about? Big picture.
I think whether it be Wilmington or anywhere, let me just say that, by the way, I think it's a U.S. Situation. Basically, the interest rates right now are hovering around 6, a little bit more. Every now and then you might find one a little bit less, but a little over 6. But I like to say, by the way, if you buy a home and you're paying a 6.5% interest rate, that's really not a bad rate. That's actually very attractive. So to get this, Vicky and I, our first house we bought when we got married in 1983, our interest rate was 12%. And sometimes people will say, yeah, but the houses weren't as much. And the answer to that's true, but we weren't making the money we were making. So we weren't making as much money. Interest rates were high. So I think it parallels with today. But if you're renting, you're paying 1,000% interest rate. Yeah. Because really, in all fairness, you're helping that landlord make money, whereas you're basically just providing shelter for your family. There are tax benefits, obviously, for owning. We certainly have many options in loans right now for people to be able to buy. I think there's a misconception about loans that you have to have 20% down to buy a home. And that's unfortunate because you do not have to have 20%.
And we're going to have a couple different lenders coming on the podcast in the next few weeks to discuss some of those options as well.
Well, I think, it's a big thing right now. Everybody keeps talking about the rates, and what is it going to do? And we've seen the rates come down about 1%, give or take, in the last year and a half. And going forward, if you listen to the so-called experts, I believe they may come down a little bit more, but here's something I think that's important. They're not going to come back down to the 3s, 4s, and 5s, or low 5s anytime soon. It's going to take another pandemic, which we do not want for that to happen. So I guess my point being is, if I were advising my children right now, if they said to me, both are homeowners, if they were renting and they said, Dad, should we buy something now or should we wait till rates come down? I would say you buy it now. A lot of times we like to say, you marry the house and you date the interest rate.
Yep.
And I think because what's going to happen is when rates start coming down a little bit more, then you're going to have more buyers to compete with. And now there are buyers to compete with, but not as many as if the rates were to go down another 0.5%. And I don't really think that's going to happen. In the meantime, houses keep going up in value.
Houses keep going up in value. We've seen that pretty consistently as the trend. I was looking at some stats the other day about not quite as many houses going on the market right now. So inventory is going to be shrinking a little bit. And then when spring market comes, there's going to be a push of buyers. There's going to be a little bit lower inventory. And we're going to find ourselves in a little bit of a pinch. So I feel like now is a good time.
It is. We're going to see multiple offers, I think, in the spring and summer. So I really do believe that, by the way, because I think that, as you mentioned, people get into the spring market. And I've often said, any time's a good time to buy a house if you can afford to do it. And so many more people can afford it. They'll just speak to their loan officer about what I can and cannot afford. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much they can afford. But I think that as we get into the spring market, we are going to see more multiple offers. And if you have multiple offers, you're going to pay more. And so right now is a perfect time. And I know people say, oh, you're a real estate agent. Yeah, you would say that. Well, I always think that home ownership does create net worth for people. And I've watched as I've now gotten older. I remember when I was a young man, I was in my 20s and 30s, and I would look at people and say, well, how did these people how did they attain wealth? And almost every person owned more than one home. And they owned real estate, whether it be a commercial building or a few rental properties, whatever. They owned real estate because real estate in time is proven to go up in value. It's not going down. On a long-term basis.
We see the crashes, but the crashes are very short-term, and then we rebound, which we saw from 2004.
Yes.
Is that the big crash? And then
2008 was really the year that we saw the crash. And, I don't think we'll see that crash again because the lending standards are much better now. Yeah. And I think they learned a valuable lesson back then. But if you think about the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen a little less than 5 million homes sold. And I think this country will get back to 5.5 to maybe 6 million houses sold a year. I think 5.5 million is more likely to see in the next couple of years. So we've been on that down cycle, if you want to call it, not the crash, but the down cycle in the last 3 or 4 years. Everywhere you look at all the so-called experts, we expect to see at least a 5% or more increase in 26. Awesome. And I think we're going to see it.